Good evening, friends, and welcome to an unscheduled live stream with Crime Time with DutyRon and Ed Wallace. I have my good friend, Lieutenant Commander Joe Cardinale, joining us tonight. Ed is traveling. He's out on the road. So I want to say a special thank you to you, Joe, for checking in and spurred a moment. I called and checked in with Joe, and he was like, let's go. Let's do a show. Yeah, I want to thank you, Joe, for being Johnny on the spot. Rex Heuermann, sentenced to 3 consecutive life without the possibility of parole today. In my opinion, Rex Heuermann, if there was ever somebody that was eligible or that deserved the death penalty, this case, 8 victims that we know of, I know for a fact in my mind that there is many more victims out there that are not yet discovered that Rex Heuermann murdered. Many people think the same way, and I believe that Judge Mazie, Supreme Court, Suffolk County, said 8 that we know of. Your thoughts on the sentencing today? We knew it was coming, but we did hear from DA Tierney. We heard from the victims' families, and that's what we always say, boss, we work for the victims and their families. That's who we heard from today, and it was a long day in court. Not presented live, but recorded, and we get to watch it. I have a small clip. But your thoughts, Joe, quickly on Rex Heuermann, Long Island serial killer. This is a case that spanned over 13 years of investigating, but went back to the 90s. Your thoughts, boss?
Quick thoughts. My hat goes off to Ray Tierney and his crew. All right, everybody from the DA's office all the way down to all the outside agencies and the Suffolk Police Department and detectives that worked the case endlessly. And I think the sentence was correct. And I'll tell you why. I believe that the families needed closure. And this is the only way they were going to get closure. If the man dies, they don't get the closure and they don't get the answers that they were entitled to. And I think Ray got all those answers by, I think through the allocution. I think it was pretty good.
Yeah, I agree 100%. He hit on all the spots. We're going to just take a little listen. This is a short synopsis. This is going to go over, if you missed or if you didn't have a chance to watch everything that happened today in court. This is just an overview of what happened today in court. A condensed version, but it is pretty good because it covers all the finer points.
Serial killer Rex Heuermann will never see the light of day again. The Gilgo Beach killer, who admitted to killing 8 women, was sentenced to life behind bars with no chance of parole.
Are you a little bit sorry for what you did to these poor innocent women? 8 women that you strangled to death, at least 8 that we know of. Are you at least a little bit sorry for that? Yes?
Yes, I am.
Heuermann spoke briefly.
There are no words I can say. I'm responsible for what was said in this room today. The words I would say have no meaning. And I'm going to leave it there at this time.
Speak up.
There was not a single empty seat in the courtroom. In fact, there were 2 overflow rooms. Now, as Rex Heuermann was led into the courtroom, it was completely silent, except for the sound of journalists across the room typing on their laptops.
Suffolk's top prosecutor, DA Ray Tierney, said Heuermann is a monster, incapable of remorse, redemption, or rehabilitation.
These murders were meticulously planned out by a psychopath who thought nothing of the victims and the consequences of his actions. A remorseless and sadistic serial killer who only cares about himself.
Defense attorney Michael Brown addressed the victims' families.
They were beautiful young ladies. Their memories will last forever. And I do sincerely apologize for the loss.
As for when Heuermann leaves the jail in Riverhead, DA Tierney said Suffolk wants to be rid of Heuermann, and he will be leaving here by the end of this week.
Get him out of here.
How great was that, boss?
I love it.
That was the judge who said, get him out of here. Usually we hear once sentence is imposed is, take charge, bailiff, he instructs the court officers to take charge. He said, get him out of here. You don't hear that often. I thought
the judge has had it. There's so much the judge wants to say. And I think his tone set the stage for everything that was went on today. Are you at least, and he had to pry it out of him to say he was sorry and everything. He's not sorry. He's not remorseful. He's sorry he got caught. That's what he's sorry about.
Yeah, agreed. I want to say a special thank you to the live chatters. This was an unscheduled. We didn't even plan this at all. 10 or 15 minutes in the making. We were going to do a pre-recorded video, but then I said, you know what? Let's do a live stream so this way we could talk to our audience. And I see Mel Stiller from Canada is in the building. Good to see you. Thank you, LJ5149 for being here. Racer Girl, always great to see you. Thank you. I listened to the victim impact statements because they were extremely powerful. That is for sure. Amazing Aunt, good to see you, Sarge. Thank you for joining. Kristen, thank you for being here and putting this together real quick. Joey Brooklyn, always good to see you. Becky B, Lori, tons of people are now just starting to stumble in. Allie Brooks, thank you so much for being a member for 15 months. Let's listen to the rest of this. It's almost done. I gotta put that back.
You sincerely apologize for this.
As for when Heuermann leaves the jail in Riverhead, DA Tierney said Suffolk wants to be rid of Heuermann, and he will be leaving here by the end of this week.
Get him out of here.
Reporting from Riverhead in Suffolk County, Cecilia Dowd, News 12.
What you have done to our family is beyond what words can express. Even though justice is done, it cannot replace what you have taken from us.
The families of the victims, emotional in court today, as many of them told Rex Heuermann and the world what each of these women meant to them.
She was a warm, bubbly, funny, intelligent, and artistic person. Most of all, she had the biggest heart of anyone I've ever known.
Her loss has caused immeasurable hardship for our family. Megan was a mother, a daughter, niece, sister, and a vibrant young woman.
That weekend, she was supposed to come home. That weekend, family and friends were looking for her. Loved ones were calling her. She wasn't going to miss that weekend. She never picked up the phone.
During each of their testimonies, Heuermann was seated just feet away from them. He never looked at them, even when several family members demanded his attention. At some points, family members of the victims spoke directly to Heuermann.
You can look at me when I'm talking. It's been about 17 years since we spoke, don't forget. Don't even bother saying that you're sorry or you couldn't help yourself because no one believes that even for a moment.
Seeing your last appearance and the way you smirked as you finally confessed to what you did to my mother proves that you need to be locked away for the safety of the community.
Prosecutors spoke on behalf of two families.
It was always my hope that the person responsible for destroying our family and the families of so many would someday be held fully accountable.
Amber's quick thinking lit the match and ignited fits of rage.
So that was basically an overview of what happened today. There was many more victim impact statements read in open court. But as you heard the young woman say, it's been 17 years since we spoke. That was one of the victim's sisters who he called with the victim's phone and said, you'll never see your sister again. And maybe I will tell you what happened to her when I see you in person. So that was part of Rex Heuermann's victimizing the victims' families as well. And he got off on that. This guy, as Rodney Harrison, the former police commissioner of Suffolk County boss, he said that he was a demon. And you know what? He was spot on, because Rex Heuermann was a pure killing machine. And he got off on the planning, the execution, and, carrying out these heinous crimes. And thank God the judge sentenced him to life without the possibility of parole ×3. This guy will never see the light of day. And I don't think he'll survive more than 20 years, if that, in prison, because he is not in good health, and I don't really care. Last time he was brought into court, he said that he was having issues with his foot, with his toe, and that pus was oozing from it. Too bad. I hope he gets eaten alive by bugs inside the state correctional facility. He's going to go upstate. And those upstate boys, those prisons aren't fun, as we know. It's nasty, and he doesn't deserve anything good. So in my opinion, he should get the death penalty, but it's not available. So, boss, I wanted to go to you because, we had a discussion, and I'm not sure how much you want to talk about this, but I feel like this case definitely could have been solved sooner than 2023. And there's many people who speculate and talk about the corruption in Suffolk County and the police commissioners and various other representatives of law enforcement, including the DA's office and the Suffolk County executive, whisking away the FBI and not following through with tips. And they said that Rex Heuermann in this current case was identified 100% on March of 2022, March 14th of 2022. Coincidentally, that was when police officer Kevin Gillespie was killed, but not in 2022, obviously, but March 14th. Never forget that day in 96. Kevin was shot and killed. So that date stood out to me. I have it in some of my notes. But do you want to talk a little bit about the past Suffolk County investigators and some of the ways they flubbed this a little bit? I don't know if that's even a good word, but
nah, I think that's a little off kilter there. It wasn't the detectives that were flubbing it. You had a lot of good detectives in Suffolk County that wanted to work this case, and they were stymied by SPOTA denying them, say, wires to go up on wires for phones and everything. They were held back. It's like they're raring to go, they want to go, and for some reason they're being held back. Why? In that administration, you'll never know. All right, because SPOTA's never going to say anything about it. But I really feel that there was a lot of good leads and everything, and I firmly believe that detectives wanted to do it. There's no doubt in my mind these detectives wanted to do their job. I know a lot of people in the detective bureau over there. They're all reputable. They're all gung ho. They want to get the case going, just like we would want to get it going. All right, but I think they were stymied back then, and I think until you got the changing of the guard to the degree you did with the new, district attorney Ray Kelly, and then you had the county exec that's with it over here. I just think, Mr. Romaine and then everybody was on the same page, and that's what you need in a case like this. You need everybody. You need all cylinders firing. All right, you can't hold the FBI back, but that's why when Ray took the helm, he kept everything close to the vest, which is the right thing to do in a big case like this. He came out with his announcements in a timely manner. He gave them the information that they needed to know without anything before the prosecution of the case, and he nailed it. Ray nailed it, and I think they had the right man at the right time to get the job done.
Agreed. Ray Tierney took the bull by the horns and went full kilt with this investigation, and all of the homicide detectives out in Suffolk worked tirelessly on this case. It was just some of the changing of the guards and some of the past. Look, we could talk about Chief Burke, right? James Burke. It turned out to be a real perp, and he was soliciting sex workers himself. He had a girl who jumped into his Suffolk County police car with his gun inside of that said police car. And there's a lot of shady stuff that surrounds Chief Burke. And that's for a whole nother conversation. But unfortunately, while this Long Island serial killer case was developing, he was in charge, and he kept getting elevated and promoted through the ranks. That was when he was a sergeant. But still, all in all, there was a lot of problems. FBI was shunned from the case, called off, or said that their services weren't needed. They needed all hands on deck. Suffolk County Police Department is a great police department, but when you have a case of this magnitude, you want to welcome all different areas. And the district attorney, Ray Tierney, said, the mitochondrial DNA and all the different aspects of cutting edge technology is what got them to where they are today. Rex Heuermann pleading guilty to murder in the first degree, murder in the second degree, and so on and so forth. But it was a long time. This case and this investigation lasted 12 years. They used a secret grand jury because they knew it was one perp, and they identified Rex Heuermann in 2022, and then they locked him up in 2023 because they were worried he was going to kill again. Why? Because they were monitoring his burner phones and his cellular devices, and they saw that he was engaging with sex workers and asking and trying to get them to come and meet him. So what they feared at that time in 2023 and why they pounced on him in New York City is because they thought he was going to kill again.
Oh, absolutely. They knew how dangerous this individual was, and the fact that they tracked him back and they did the timeline and they systematically showed the timeline and the map how he was moving about coming out onto Long Island. It shows you how deep they went into this case. And you and I spoke about this as well. I think there's going to be other cases tied into this man, no question about it. All right, and it's just going to be a question of putting those cases together as they come. They come about, the evidence comes out there, people seeing this now, seeing that he's really going to go away and everything. Some people might want to come forward and say, have that moment where they have a conscience in their brain, they just turn around in their body and they turn around and say, this is something that you guys overlooked. You might want to look into this. Yeah. You can't pin everybody down, meaning bodies, to him until you can piece everything together, because as we saw, there were bodies there that did not belong to him. All right, they proved it otherwise. All right,
right. With Peaches and the baby, there was a collar made. It was her significant other who took her out. But hey, look here, Jackie C. She says, "Oh, he would have continued if not caught." Absolutely, and eight wasn't the number. There's many more victims that are still out there that are unidentified. Rex Heuermann's DNA is in CODIS. They checked and ran him through CODIS. But as these investigators start trying to now match up DNA that was previously unidentified, now they could run it back into CODIS. And there's going to be a lot of things. This isn't the last that we're going to hear about Rex Heuermann. And I feel like, closure isn't the right word, but getting families to come to peace with knowing who did what to their loved one. It just, unless you're in that position, you just don't know how valuable that is. Let's take a listen to the judge as he tears Rex Heuermann a new a-hole in court. It was some of the best performance that I've seen from a Supreme Court judge in a long time, and I think it's worth taking a look at. So let's look and listen to Judge Mazie, Suffolk County Supreme Court judge, give Rex Heuermann the business.
Are you a little bit sorry for what you did to these poor innocent women? 8 women that you strangled to death, at least 8 that we know of. Are you at least a little bit sorry for that? Yes?
Yes, I am.
The word. It almost seemed like he had to force that yes out of him, right? Because he was just not answering him.
But he would have never answered him. He had to force it out of him. There's no way he was going to answer that. And the fact that he looked down the entire time and would not look at them shows you the coward that this guy, is. He's such a coward. He's a demon, but yet he's the biggest coward.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. But he's not sorry one iota. Nobody buys it. All right. He's just sorry, like I said, that he got caught. You know what, Ron? These families have been serving a life sentence for over 17 years. All right. And that's the sad part of this. Everybody forgets the families become the life sentence victims. All right. People get out of jail in this corrupt parole system we have in New York State. They get out and they serve the rest of the life sentence for their entire lives, where these criminals go out and they're back on the street. This guy will never see the street. All right. No. But like you said, you hope he has a hard time in jail. So do I. But you know what? I doubt he's going to get a conscience, but I just hope there's some kind of, time that they come across some information and he has to collaborate it just to get maybe, I don't know, a roll of toilet paper. He's got to confess to something. Who knows,
New Jersey Elaine says, and thank you for being a channel member. She says, it's terrifying to see video footage of him walking around New York City on a crowded street. He essentially for, upwards of 20 years, has just mixed in with Long Island. He lived in Massapequa Park, quiet, beautiful community. I have friends who live on the same block as Rex Heuermann. I was out at Gilgo Beach today where he unfortunately dumped a lot of his victims. It was a dumping ground. I hate even using that word, but there's no other better way to put it. He dumped his victims and discarded them like they were trash in the thick bush of Ocean Parkway. And I was out there today riding my e-bike along that path. And my brother and I, retired lieutenant, my brother, we stopped. We said a little prayer. And I was filming with the Insta360. We stopped at the places because I know the exact spots where these girls were, the remains were found. We stopped, said small prayers and thoughts, to them and the families. And I said on camera, isn't it ironic that we're here today, randomly taking a ride, and Rex Heuermann is being sentenced as we speak. So he walked around and assimilated with society undetected. There were people that worked for him. He attended functions of architects and, interacted with people at his local Starbucks. The barista who used to serve him actually reached out to me, a male. I'm not going to, obviously mention his name. He reached out to me. He was like, I'd like to tell you a little bit about Rex Heuermann. And I had a conversation with him, and he was willing to come on as long as I didn't show his face, and talk about how friendly and nice and, engaging he was, and like how this front that he put up, Joe, he was successfully intermingling with society. A murderer. People don't realize this, but evil walks amongst us every day. They're out there, and better than anybody because you were a lieutenant commander of many investigative squads, and many have been involved in many investigations pertaining to violent offenders and murderers. They're out there, and they just weave and bob through society. Your thoughts on that, boss?
Well, we know that. I mean, just in Brooklyn alone, and there's a reason. I wanted to touch on something. They call it, you don't like to call it a dumping ground. There's a reason why they call it a dumping ground. You could go back to the Fountain Avenue landfill, where the mob buried, so many of their victims, especially the Gemini twins, under the DeMeo crew. They did so many bodies over there that I would be driving in to work. I'd be coming in for a tour, and I would see crime scene up on the hill, which is now, the shopping center off of the Bell Parkway over there. And I would see the crime scene there, and I'd detour and go up there, and I'd see some of the detectives I know and what's going on. They go, what do you think is going on? Another skeleton was found, and you'd see the skeleton with the hole in the head, the skull. And there was so many of them because that was truly a dumping ground over there. That was their place of choice. And that's what happened out here in Long Island. They had a secluded area that nobody was monitoring because it was, secluded, it was serene and everything. And at dark, at nighttime, you can't see anything over there. They used it to their advantage as well. So, I mean, we've seen so many of these animals, all right? And I can't even, we shouldn't refer to them as animals because animals have more love in them than any of these dirtbags. And I'll tell you something. It's just that you're right. They do walk amongst us. And then when you do find out, you say, I never suspected that. I mean, you look at your famous killers like the Iceman, and the DeMeo crew, what they used to do to test the testers, and the and Anthony Center cutting up the bodies in the Gemini Lounge. That's where they got the name Gemini Twins. So it's a way of life for them, and that's the scary part. And you talk about that switch. That switch is always on with them. They're walking down the street, they're happy as can be, smiling and everything. Rex put on a good shot with that.
Yeah. So he was promised no further prosecution if he cooperated with the FBI's behavioral analysis unit. So unfortunately, we haven't heard the last from Rex Heuermann, and I would almost bet money that he will brag and boast about some of these crimes and talk about some of the details because he knows that he's already pled on these 7 murders, but he's got a guarantee of no further prosecution by the district attorney in Suffolk County. That doesn't mean that if the district attorney in Las Vegas or the district attorney in another jurisdiction comes up with stuff that they can't go after him. It's just a promise and part of the plea agreement. Not really a plea agreement, but I'll take that back. It's part of the agreement that no further prosecution as it pertains to the Gilgo Beach murders will commence against him. But Rex is to cooperate with the FBI's behavioral analysis unit, and that should be interesting to hear if, he lets his hair down, so to speak, and talks about some of his crimes, because we could learn a thing or two from a serial killer like Rex Heuermann. He was cold, calculated, and I mean, I don't want to go into it. I have notes all over the place here, but he had a full writing board of they took out of that house like an easel of all of his writings of what not to do, what to do, how to get better sleep before his next kill and his next victim. It was really eye-opening to hear it. But let's take a listen to the rest of this.
I would say have no meaning.
Yes?
Yes, I am. The words I would say have no meaning. And I'm going to leave it there.
Talking about a ferocity from a judge you don't normally see every single day. Not only did this judge demand, basically, that Rex stand up when he addressed the court and the victims, but at the end, he told him to get out. I mean, the words were just vicious. And so basically inside this courtroom, we had more than a dozen of the victims' family members, one by one, continue to just deliver these blows, talking about the real personal impacts that Rex's crimes had on their lives. And we heard from basically the 7 victims, the family members of 7 victims that are charged in the 7 charges that he has been sentenced with. And the 8th family, that's Karen Vergata's family, was in court but did not speak. And it was emotional, it was raw, it was painful from all of these victims' families. They talked about the impact this had on their lives. They talked about growing up without a parent. They talked about growing up without a sister, the holidays missed.
Let's stop it just for a second because there's a conversation in the chat going on. And
Yeah, I saw that.
I don't particularly like to look at the chat while we're doing something, but this is something that we both talked about before we went live. Rex Heuermann's wife claims that she knew nothing about anything that he did inside that home. He murdered all of those victims in his home, all or most of them. Okay. Now she's going to claim that she knew nothing about it. She's still living in that home. Granted, everybody has situations where they can't get out, but she's trying, and she is making millions of dollars on the backs of these murdered victims who her husband, who's on the picture on the screen right here, Rex Heuermann, murdered these women viciously. And she's making millions of dollars with the 50 Cent production crew, with Peacock, and all of these different places that have been following her and her personal attorney, walking around the courthouse, filming footage, making content based off the vicious murders that her husband committed. How dare her? And I don't care what anybody thinks about, DutyRon, you shouldn't be going after. I'm not going after her. I'm simply voicing what's right is right and what's wrong is wrong. She should, as you said, Joe, and these are Joe's words. Actually, I'm going to let you tell the audience what you told me just about an hour ago, what she should do with that money that she earns.
That money should go to the victims, all the victims, the families of all these victims. It's ridiculous that she gets the profit. They do the life sentence. She goes on her merry way. How she can even live in that house is beyond me. Poor me, woe is me. Go live in a hotel if you have to. How can you stay in a house where all these heinous acts were committed? It's disgusting. All right. And then they were so quiet. They were, very meek and mild. Rex couldn't have done this. And all of a sudden they change their tone when they have a lawyer. And the lawyer says, you can say this, you could say that. That's why they're called mouthpieces. All right. That they're over there speaking for them. But she, in her own right, is a coward. All right. And she's a loser. And that's why everybody will see her. The fact that they get to profit off of this is ridiculous. All right. The laws have to apply to the families as well. Families should not profit off of other people's misery. No way, no how. All right. And she's another one that she has no conscience whatsoever to even go over and say, oh, we've paid you've paid nothing compared to these families. So, go away with yourself. You're disgusting.
Yeah, I agree, Joe. It makes me sick to my stomach when I hear her speak on behalf of her husband and a victim. She goes and visits him in Suffolk County Jail by the admission of Sheriff Toulon. He says that she comes to visit him on a regular basis. How are you going and supporting this man when you know 100% that he had that torture chamber in the basement? He had all of 177 weapons they took out of that house: long guns, pistols, antique weapons. The list goes on and on. We covered this from beginning to end. I was outside of that house on numerous occasions reporting live with the news crew down the block. I had to go and see it myself. And I be honest with you, I went past that house just as recent as about 3 months ago. And it's still a pigsty. It still looks like a house in shambles. But the fact of the matter is we know 100% that he murdered all, if not most, of his victims in that home. And I don't buy that he planned around his kills, her sending her off to vacation.
No way.
If you can hear the birds outside chirping, then people can hear my victims. So I have to keep them quiet and give them as little air so they can't scream or make a noise. The torture that these poor women endured leading up to their deaths at the hands of this monster, and you have his wife making millions of dollars. It's sick.
I'm sorry. At what point does she say, "Oh, the Thorazine wore off on this day," and I do recall something. There's no way, as you said, Ron. There's no way for all those murders and everything, unless they do have a timeline where he sent them away, and at that point is mommy and the kids saying, "Oh, Dad's up to something this weekend. We don't want to be around here. We got to get out of town."
Right.
He's had to show behavior within that household.
Yeah.
All right. All these guns are there. Oh, he's an avid hunter. He's an avid hunter, my ass.
And
he was an avid hunter of women.
His grown daughter was an employee of his right up until his arrest in 2023. The daughter worked in his office. So you can't tell me that there's no clues there. There's nothing that stood out unless you're just living with a blindfold on. Let's take a listen to the rest of this and then we'll wrap it up. We're going to take some questions from the audience if you don't mind, Joe.
No.
7 victims that are charged in the seven charges that he has been sentenced with. And the 8th family, that's Karen Vergata's family, was in court but did not speak. And it was emotional, it was raw, it was painful from all of these victims' families. They talked about the impact this had on their lives. They talked about growing up without a parent. They talked about growing up without a sister. The holidays missed, the memories missed, the moments missed. At some points, they directed directly the energy and the anger at Rex. You had one case where you had one of the victim's family members tell Rex to look at her in that moment. It was the only time Rex actually did look at any of the victim's family members. Otherwise, he just sat there, hands folded.
Joe, I don't know if you remember when this was all going on, but they had tons of drones and helicopters circling that house 24/7. But this is a overview here of where everyone was staged. So the house is here. I don't know if you could see my cursor on the screen. It's blue. It's kind of small.
Yeah.
But here's that house. His house. And everybody was staged here. You actually couldn't even go on this side where the RMP is. You had to stay back over here. And the neighbors on this side, and this is his neighbor right next door to him. That was a retired fireman. He gave an early report to the news that the only problem he had with Rex was early on when many years ago, he caught Rex Heuermann looking at his wife in a bikini, this guy's wife on the corner, his wife was in the bikini in their backyard, and she caught him looking over the fence at his wife, and he said something to him, and then that was the only time he had a problem with him. Was Rex sizing up his wife to be his next victim? Who knows? The guy's
maybe he was just, looking and saying, I have to get one like that, because I don't think he would do anything close to home. That's why he spread it out, and then there was a question here about the smell of death and everything. Those victims never stayed there that long.
No.
All right. They were gone. They were gone and put where, over at Gilgo. It's something that here's something that I have to mention before we close this out. Ray Tierney gave the victims' families all the dignity that he could. Every step of the way, he explained what was going on to a degree with them to put their minds at ease. All right. And everybody has to keep in mind, because don't forget, people were really putting them down, saying that they were sex workers. Nobody cared. And to the extent of it, I don't say the police department. Other people might say, you know what, the kind of work you're getting involved in, but you don't know the background of any of these women. So that should be put out. And Ray never entertained that one iota. All right. And the fact that he gave them the dignity and gave them the peace of mind that they needed to close this case out, and this is what I'm going to do, speaks volumes of, the magnitude of this district attorney. All right. Why he wins hands down easily this last election, because there's nobody else that could really do that job to the way Ray did. So, and the way he continues to do it on other cases that I follow with him.
Hey, point well taken, boss. Ray Tierney, a complete consummate professional. He put the families first. He never wavered on giving up information in the hundreds of interviews that he did. He never gave up any information that would jeopardize the case. So kudos to him, and he kept the victims' families first. I also want to point out, too, that I was impressed with Rodney Harrison, the former police commissioner. He shook the hands and hugged each one of the victims that were at the press conferences. You don't see that often. And I got to say that Rodney Harrison, in my opinion, again, another professional that put the victims' families first, the victims and their families first. I want to also point out another thing, too, and a lot of people forget about this, is as it pertains to the smell and how we know that he dumped his victims along Ocean Parkway. They also took out the drains. Ed Wallace and I had a long discussion about this. They cut out the bathtub. We learned this because Asa Ellerup complained that her house wasn't livable. It wasn't livable before they cut your tub out and took the drain out. But the reason they did that is because there's a potential, which we haven't heard about yet, and we may never hear about it, but they could have, in this investigation, had information that led them to believe that he washed his victims or had his victims take a shower before he killed them, or after he killed them, put them in the bathtub and tried to clean up the blood or clean them up. They took the drains out from inside that house. They gutted the piping system inside that house. They spent days inside the basement of that home. And that's where, as you know, anybody who lives on Long Island or has a house that has a basement, all of the main plumbing and all the water and sewer lines that comes in through the basement. And they were down there a long time and did a lot of work. They dug the whole entire backyard up. There is so much about this case, but I am just so happy and relieved that he is sentenced to 3 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole. I want to let this small little piece play, and then we'll take some questions from the audience, if you don't mind.
Nope.
Looking straight ahead or down, very calm, no reaction. And it was, again, a very emotional, painful moment. You could tell that for everything these family members had been through for the last 30 years plus, they let it out today in the courtroom, and they made sure Rex truly heard it. And one of the really interesting things is when we were in the courtroom, when the judge delivered the sentence and he told Rex to get out, there was an applause. He's cheering and applause.
That was a great applause. That was really great. And again, we want to remember the 8 victims. He admitted to that 8th victim, Karen Vergata, but Maureen Brainerd Barnes, Melissa Bartholomew, Amber Costello, Megan Waterman, Valerie Mack, Jessica Taylor, and Sandra Castillo. So let's go to the chat. Hashtag Joe. We'll just make it easy. Hashtag Joe, hashtag DutyRon. Your thoughts on what we have going on here? Again, going forward, there is a process of appeal that everybody's afforded that right under the Constitution in the state of New York as well. You can appeal, but I don't think that he's going to be doing that. Again, that agreement was he cooperates with the FBI Behavioral Analysis Unit. I think Rex is going to have a real hard time in state prison because it's not going to be like Suffolk County. He's going to be up there, and those correctional officers upstate, they don't play games, and he's not going to have a good time. They're not going to accommodate him. He's not going to get a lot of special attention. New Jersey Elaine, yes, that's been confirmed that he definitely did keep trophies on some of his victims. What those trophies are and were, we don't know, but it was confirmed by the DA that he did keep various different trophies, so to speak, little trinkets. Don't forget there was that the storage facility, Arrow Storage, I believe it was in Amityville.
Yeah.
So they were at that location for a long time looking at one of his storage lockers there. And what do you think they were looking for there? So relics.
Yep.
Yeah. So Erica Olson says no pizza for Rex in state prison. No. Ocean Girl says it's a great question. Thanks for being a channel member. Thank you for always being here. 505 Ocean Girl. DutyRon, did he pay for his representation or did he have a public defender? I hope he spent his own money. That attorney was a public defender, not a private attorney. So he must have showed that he didn't have the funds to pay a private attorney. So his attorney was a public defender. So, and I found it odd that his attorney did a media circuit and he worked with Court TV and was like a commentator during the course of this whole situation. So Michael Brown was on Court TV giving commentary on other cases.
Yeah, I mean, that shouldn't have been until this case. He should have held back on that because this is all about fame and everything. He did keep it in line. He did keep a civil aspect to it. All right. But you know what? If this guy was making a living and everything, and they should have seized the house, they should have seized this house for court fees and everything. This isn't somebody that's, living off the streets and who didn't have any means whatsoever. But, I mean, ridiculous that.
Right.
They're going to make money and they can't get the money back to the state. Come on, give me a break.
Right. You're right. So this is a good question. Deb says, why only 3 life sentences when 8 girls were killed? 3 of the charges were first-degree murder, which holds life without the possibility of parole in New York. The other charges he was convicted of were second-degree murder, and under the New York state law, second-degree murder is 25 to life. So that's why on the remaining, with the exception of Karen Vergata, the remaining victims, 4 through 7, he received 25 to life as well on top. So that's why that is. I hope that answers your question, and I hope I didn't confuse you more. But that's basically it. Those 3 were convictions of first degree murder, and then the other 4 were second degree. All right. Here's Lorraine Avellino. DutyRon, is Rex Heuermann allowed to write a book or get paid for it? No. Under the Son of Sam law, and there's different variations of this throughout the United States. He's not going to be able to get paid for it or have any compensation. Is his wife allowed to give him money from the blood that she receives, blood money she receives? She could put money on his books. I don't think there's anything that would stop her from doing that. So yeah, there's no law that says that she can't put money on the books for him.
Think of the irony with that. Just think of the irony. She's going to make money off the book for something, for the heinous acts that he committed, and she's going to use that money to put it on the books for him, for that fat slob to go over there and get whatever he wants from the commissary. It's ridiculous. I mean, the laws in New York State have to change when it comes to that. All right, but that's a whole new story. But that should change up there. They should make the laws that the family under certain circumstances, especially like this, all right, should not be entitled to make that money. No way, no how.
So Michelle says, what happened to all the guns that they took into custody? Now, depending on what they have in this case, they probably destroyed those guns. But if they're thinking that maybe he used a weapon in another case somewhere else, like let's just say he killed a victim in Las Vegas, and I keep going to Vegas because he had a timeshare there, and he also had a timeshare in other different various locations. His brother had property down in the Carolinas. But if he used a weapon in a case that they didn't know about, they don't want to just discard them. So I think there would be a period that Suffolk County would hold on to him, but eventually they'll just scrap them, right? They kind of just crush them.
There's no use for them, naturally, like you said, that would be my key thing. How do we know he did not use any one of these weapons to do something, and you destroy him, and then you have ballistics that shows up down the road, and you do want to just close something out that way? I mean, they're not going to you say they can't prosecute, but I mean, he's got timeshares and he needs a public defender. Keep weighing those things,
Yeah. So Lori says, DutyRon, what if he committed a murder in a different state? Will he have a trial there? That depends on that state, whether they want to, most will, if they have good evidence, most will want to, have a proceeding. So this no further prosecution is from Ray Tierney from Suffolk County District Attorney's Office. That doesn't mean that if it's somewhere outside of that jurisdiction and that prosecutor wants to go after him, then they'll be able to do that. So, but again, he's in forever. He's in. But that would be for the families of any further victims. Think about if, God forbid, Rex Heuermann murdered one of your family members, unbeknownst to you, now with the technology, now with the DNA, with him being in CODIS, and then now they put the stuff together and say, hey, he murdered your so-and-so. You would want that prosecution to go forward, right? You wouldn't want someone to say, well, we don't want to really waste our tax dollars. He's already in for 3 consecutive lives plus 25 to life times 4. Let's just leave him alone. That doesn't bode well, right? Emily Parkinson says his wife is disgusting. She knew without a doubt. I mean, look, how could she not have any inkling, not even a little bit of a hint? Come on. I'm not buying it. I don't buy it. I mean, I might have been born in 1964, but I wasn't born last night. Joe, I'm sorry. I'm not seeing any questions for you, but if you want
that's fine. I'm enjoying this.
DutyRon, I watched part of the Peacock documentary, and Asa Ellerup admitted to feeling Rex saved her from a bad childhood / life and admitted to still loving him. I remember that. Very telling, very shocking. If I say this, okay, putting aside, I mean, you can't put aside the murders, but he was being unfaithful to his wife with prostitutes and sex workers. There's no good way to say that word, so come at me if you have to, but he's cheating on his wife with a paid sex worker, right? And killing them to boot. I mean, how could she have one iota of love for this guy at this point is beyond me. I don't give a shit what he saved her from or what the fuck he did for her. He's a monster.
She was up there saying there's no way he could do this. She was saying that at one time, and all of a sudden, when this evidence started coming out, she went, "Uh-oh, better shut up." And that's when the lawyer got involved and said, "You need to stop saying that."
Yeah, but she never did shut up, and she was giving the finger to the press. She was, cursing people out. I have a whole folder of Long Island serial killer. This thing is packed with notes. I have court documents up the wazoo here that list all of his gruesome, horrible searches on the internet, and all of the things that he did while living under the same roof with her and his 2 children. So, you know, if you're going to say, oh, you know, Asa's a victim, I had people come at me during the course of this thing. I was like, you're being too harsh on his wife. She's a victim too. And I was like, get the fuck out of here.
She's a victim of getting her plumbing ripped out. That's the victim. She's a victim. That's what she's a victim of. And you know, you got enough money now from what you already made from what do you go 50-cent productions and everything to turn around and replace everything. But yet your house is still a crap hole that he never fixed up. All right. And she's complaining about living there. Hey, you got money. You could buy a new house.
Yeah. Yeah. Crazy, crazy. Listen, this has been almost an hour of unscheduled coverage of Rex Heuermann, the Long Island serial killer, sentenced to life without parole ×3, and then some extra time to go on top of that, another 100 years or whatever. May he rot in his prison cell. May the bugs crawl over him night after night. May he not have one good day for the vicious, evil torture that he perpetrated onto innocent victims. Of course, you know, working in a field that was, you know, you deemed that's criminal activity, but nobody deserves to die at the hands of a homicidal maniac. And make no mistake, Rex Heuermann was a killing machine. And if not caught, he would have killed again and again and again and again. So at the end of the day, Rex Heuermann is where he belongs. If it was up to me, he'd be in front of a firing squad, and I would volunteer to pull the trigger because that is a demon. Evil, evil, evil. There's no worse. That man lived on the same island that I live on. My house to his house is a 30-minute casual car ride, not even getting on the parkway. I could take Sunrise Highway right there, or, you know, one of the avenues and make my way down there without even getting on a parkway. This guy is where he belongs, and I hope and pray that he has the worst possible time. Joe, I'll go to you for final thoughts.
Yeah, you know what? My prayers go out to the family still. I hope they got some of the closure they were looking for. I know Ray gave them every opportunity to, not opportunity, every reason to feel some kind of closure. And I feel you know, grateful to him for giving them that. It's going to be, this case is far from over. It's going to be, they're going to talk about it in long when we're gone. They'll be talking about him. And I hope the profile they come out with can fit somebody else, and they start putting, you know, a rhyme or reason to something that can help in another case down the road.
Amen to that, boss. You always say it real well. And I want to just quickly show up on the screen, even though there are some extra thumbnails. I hate when that happens, but these are our victims right here. Maureen Brainerd Barnes, Melissa Bartholomew, Amber Costello, Megan Waterman, Valerie Mack, Jessica Taylor, Sandra Castilla, and Karen Vergata. And there's many, many more that are not known to us at this particular time. May they continue to rest in peace, and their families have some calming, something to help them get. They're going to be dealing with this for a lifetime, but always thoughts, prayers, and positive vibes go out to the victims' families. And thank you all for being here and spending your time. I know you can get your true crime fix any other place. There's so many other YouTube content creators. We are appreciative that you're here. Ed is traveling, otherwise he would have been on with me, but he sends his best with Linus, and that's his new addition to his family. I want to just say, please, if you haven't yet subscribed or hit the thumbs up, take a minute to do that. Leave us a comment down below in the comments. It's a great, 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 great way to continue the conversation after the conversation is done here. Thank you to the moderators, the replay viewers, and anybody who's given super chat or become members during this live stream. Portugal is in the house. Good to see you from Portugal. Thank you. Jadzia Dax 1969. Thank you for being a member, and thank you for all of your support. All right, that's it from New York. Joe, thanks for being here on a moment's
Anytime, my friend.
I always can count on you. And it was funny because I wasn't even really planning, and you were like, hey, if you want to do something, I'm ready to go. I'm here. Let's do it. So thank you, Joe. All right.
You got it, my friend.
Good night from New York. We'll see you all soon.